on a sister ship. Come with us, we on a sister ship. Yeah, we on a sister ship. Roll with us, we on a sister ship.
Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it.
We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya.
Substance. Sis, you know we on a mission, no games. Help each other get over some things. Build strength, bring change. Cause we've been through the rain. Now it's time to shine like bling. Let's talk about life skills. We building up our quality to right wills. We rolling out of poverty, love heals. So we become the prodigy of how a sistership could be a really hot commodity. Stand together, we united, hold hands. Support each other dreams and our plans. Doing everything we can just to show we understand the power of a friendship fam. Live life on purpose. Together we learn and yeah, let's talk. We don't wanna see you hurt and we here for each other. No matter the color, networking. That's for sure and for certain. Come on.
Yeah, we on a sister ship. Come with us, we on a sister ship. Yeah, we on a sister ship. Roll with us, we on a sister ship. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya.
Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sister ship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it.
We on a sister ship.
Yes, we are.
Hey, ladies, happy Sunday. Happy blessed Sunday. This is such a beautiful day. It's
Yes,
actually
it is.
nice and warm outside today.
Yes.
Ugh,
It's
the
a
weather.
perfect day.
Perfect day. I want to say today is such a topic that affects everyone.
Yes.
And today we're going to be talking about I'm a survivor, overcoming and healing from sexual abuse. This is your girl, Stefania. And I want to introduce our panel, our host, and our guest today because with this subject, I mean, I think we're all been in some way or form affected by it.
Right.
And, have life experiences and want to learn and engage and teach people how to have those conversations, right? How to be healing, how to understand what resources are available to them, how to look for the signs, how to understand how to have these conversations. So today is such an important day. It's a glorious day outside, and it's a great day to have this conversation because I think sometimes we, there's conversations about it being taboo or parents don't want to talk about it or they're afraid to have the conversations because they don't know how to have them.
Right.
So it's such an important day to kind of evolve, right, and grow from this.
Absolutely.
So with that said, I'm going to go around the room here because I want to make sure we introduce everybody here. We've got Mama C.
Woohoo!
Our oracle, our all-knowing, our sistership founder. I'm glad to have you here because I know that this conversation or this topic initially came from one of our previous shows, Colorism, and you shared some experiences that you encountered as a child. So, we're thankful you're here because I know it's a difficult conversation for all of us to have.
Well, the only thing I can say is I'm walking in my calling. Not everybody survives. And I think that when I began the healing journey, not really consciously at age 19, I was preparing to be able to share on a level that a lot of people are afraid to share. And just let people know that you don't have to be a victim because you were victimized. And I say this all the time when we have these types of shows. I never thought of myself as a victim. I was victimized by my father, sexually victimized by my father. And so, you know, I could have allowed the pain to eat me up alive, or I could choose to now be the captain of my own ship and find my way out of the craziness, which is what I did.
Yes, and we're so blessed to have you here today, because your experiences are definitely things that people need to hear and understand. Because as survivors, you know, you have to know how to have those conversations.
Absolutely.
And know that you're not alone.
Absolutely.
In the journey, and not alone on being impacted by a traumatizing experience like that.
Right.
Lady K, we are so happy to have. This is my first time in the studio with you.
Really?
It is.
Okay.
This year.
Wow, look at that. Well, I want to say good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kalima, a.k.a. Lady K in the house. How are everyone today?
Everybody.
Yeah, that was my Ebonic today.
That
How are everyone today?
Yeah, you know, we all go there every now and then, you know. You laugh it off and keep it moving, you know.
Hey, today's the day.
Today
Let's
is
do
the
it.
day.
Let's do
And like
it.
you said,
Let's
it's
do it.
beautiful. And we can talk about this conversation because it's very much needed in the community. A lot of people feel like they can't, but you know, we are living in a different age and time, so you have to talk about this. We have to educate our children. There's so
Right.
many resources available, and we actually have a person today that's going to
Absolutely.
actually give us so much resource. So please introduce
Yes,
yourself to everyone.
Lauren.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I'm Lauren Peterson. I'm the Executive Director at Women's Resources of Monroe County, serving domestic and sexual violence victims here in Monroe County for the last 41 years.
I mean, I think we're all so thankful that you were able to be here today, and I know how important of a conversation and subject this is for you. So we're actually glad, you know, that you were able to be here today with us, because we do need somebody who's got expertise in this area, because
Sure.
it is difficult to know what to say and to have conversations with care
Right.
and
Right.
respect.
This is it's a very uncomfortable topic. Let's call a moose
it
a
is.
moose.
Yeah.
Sexual abuse, sexual violence, rape, it makes people uncomfortable. And
Yes, it
honestly, it should, because uncomfortableness creates growth,
Yeah.
creates the opportunity for change. It's called growing pains for a reason, and we need to be having these important topics as adults, as community members, but also, I'm not a parent, but you all are parents, but with our children and in the schools and in the environments, to start them very young about talking about bodily autonomy, about consent, about respect, and understanding these difficult topics that when they grow into adults, they're less likely to become victimized. And I love that you brought that term up, that you didn't identify yourself as a victim, you were victimized. And it's about flipping the script.
Flipping the script
Flipping
on
the
the
script,
abuser.
absolutely. We always talk about victim blaming all the time,
Right.
and you talk about these. Well, what were you wearing? Why were you at it?
Right,
Why didn't you? It's like why didn't he stop touching me? Why does he
Absolutely.
feel? Why does this person feel like they get the right to put their hands on me?
Absolutely.
Right.
And you're right. We have to keep talking about this a very profound topic, because it's happening to so many people. And I know when I was director of Women's Health Services, a program I designed and directed at the hospital where I worked at the time, I used to go and I spoke to many different women's organizations, and I shared my story. I could always identify a woman or women who, number one, had never heard anyone speak out loud about this topic. And at the end of my speaking to the group, they would come up to me, and some of them would just hug me, and some of them would start crying in the audience. And I could spot them. The ones who just start crying,
Right.
And so I was able to help segue other women into mental health services that would allow them to effectively deal with what had happened with them, you know. So I think this is a topic we're probably going to have more than once,
absolutely.
twice, 3 times, because every time we do it, we will reach somebody.
Yes.
And I find that the more I talk about it, the more I heal.
Yeah.
Right.
The more I feel good about myself,
Right.
because I'm not only, sharing my story, it's other people's story, it's other
absolutely.
women's story,
Absolutely.
and so I think it's important that we all recognize, and if you're someone who's gone through sexual abuse, whether it's childhood sexual abuse or even when you were older, keep saying to yourself, I am not a victim because I was victimized.
Yeah,
I'm
and
a
reach
victim
out.
if I choose to be a victim.
Absolutely, and reach
Right.
out. And there is absolutely healing in solidarity together.
Absolutely.
And that's why Women's Resources does what we do, and we're here for the community. You can contact our 24-hour hotline any time of day. It doesn't matter if it's 2 p.m., 2 a.m., and you will always get a trained crisis counselor to
And
talk
what
to
is
you.
that number? Share that number. We're going to
Absolutely.
share that number a few times. While
Yeah,
we're here.
it's
right.
570-421-4200, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Absolutely.
That's incredible. One thing I want to know for anyone who's actually listening in today and has any questions or comments that they want to share with us, we obviously have Lauren here, which is amazing. You can reach the station. We are, right now, 888-304-4401 through the time that we're live here at the station. And again, call in if you have any questions, comments, because this is not just a conversation with us, it's a conversation with everyone.
Absolutely. And I like to tell people that you have to realize we were all designed, created, and born into the world to be awesome human beings. Unfortunately, we run into not so awesome folks who negatively impact on our journey while we're here. But we have to shake all that. We've got to find a way to shake it all off. And yes, it took me years to get to where I am now because every day is a healing journey for me. Right. And I have to remember that I got the power. And I use that power to my best advantage and to others as well. So you have to realize that you have the power to rise above what has happened to you. But you got to be willing to break the silence.
Yeah.
Break your silence. If you're holding that in and just allowing yourself to be eaten up alive from the inside out, you're never going to be able to become the fabulous, dynamic, and awesome member of the human family that you were sent here to be. We've got to overcome our situations, no matter what they are, whether it's childhood sexual abuse as an adult, or maybe something else, abuse, physical abuse, whatever. We have to learn to move beyond that. And I started my journey of healing at age 19 when I decided that I was now the captain of my ship and I had to figure out and learn how to navigate in the outer world, because in the world that I grew up in, there was always a storm. It was stormy and dark. So I had to choose to walk to move beyond the darkness and into the light of the world that, I now had to navigate as an adult. And every day is a healing journey. Every day,
Can I bring you back real quick, Marcia? I love how you said you took back your power.
Right.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people
Strong.
let their power in the hands of their abuser.
Yes.
Right.
And they stay in the shell and they don't want to speak and they don't want to talk. But like you said, as you yourself, when you come out and you speak, you give them the courage. Well, maybe I should say something. Maybe I should reclaim back my power. Because,
Absolutely.
And it's never too late. It doesn't matter if you're 20, 30,
Right.
40, 50, 70. It does not matter. As long as you get to that pivotal point and you say, you know what, let me take back what's mine. And that's my power and
Right.
how I want to control it. Because I'm not going to
Absolutely.
put the ball in your court because I will never give you that power.
Yep.
So power,
Absolutely.
putting the ball in your hand is so powerful.
Right.
And wanting that healing and just go to your next level in life is so powerful.
Absolutely.
Yes,
I mean,
it
that's
is.
the empowerment work that Women's Resources does is so critical. And sexual abuse, domestic abuse, child abuse, it all revolves around power and control. That is the core of what is being done to another person. The method of that power control can be sexual acts, physical acts, financial abuse, emotional, verbal abuse, but the core of it always revolves around power and control.
Right.
And you can get that opportunity to take back your power. And that's what our counselors are trained to help you do. So when I go to a hospital in the middle of the night for a rape victim, the way that I was trained and the way that I train others is when I walk into that room, I ask very simple questions to start that process. May I come in? Would you like me to sit down with you? Would you like a tissue? It's allowing them to choose for themselves,
Absolutely.
to recognize
Right.
that they
The
have the
beginning.
option. the
Right.
option to make choices and have those choices be respected.
Yes.
That's this whole thing about power, and I just thought about it. I mean, when you said that, that changes the conversation and makes you feel empowered at that point as a person who was victimized to say, hey, you don't own me. I get to make the decision now
Right.
on how I want to address it. So I love that about taking the power and
And one of the things I think is also important is that what we're doing today, we're not able to empower you.
Right.
We're able to give you tips, tools, and
right.
tactics,
Right.
as my dear friend Cassandra Mack often says, that will help to empower you. But only if you use them
right.
and become enriched. I always say you can't empower your life until you become enriched with the information you need to do that.
Right.
You know, I hear a lot of women say, "Oh, I'm empowered." Well, if you ask them, "Well, what does that mean and how did you become empowered?" they give you the stare because they're not sure. They're only sharing something that they've heard
Right.
on a consistent basis. You know, everybody's talking about, well, I'm empowered. But when you stop them and ask them, well, what does that mean? And they can't answer that, then that means they're only verbalizing something that they've been hearing, but they don't understand how to become empowered. So we have to get the information, gain strategies on how to maneuver our way out of the darkness, out of the pain, out of the guilt, out of the shame that we feel when we are victimized by someone.
And I love that analogy you're using about the darkness and the storm. There's this great book that I have, and I utilize it with my counseling clients sometimes. It's by Charlie Mackesy, and it's called The Boy, the Fox, the Mole, and the Horse, or some kind of version of that.
Right.
But it's all artwork, and one of the best passages in there, and it's so elaborate, the art he uses, they're walking through this very dark, stormy forest, and it's really hard to see, and it's all scary, and there's a lot of dark colors happening, and the boy says, I can't see the way forward. I don't know how we're going to get through this. And the other character, the horse, says, can you see your next step? Well, then just take that one.
Right.
It's just one step,
One step
at a time. You don't have to see the very end.
Absolutely.
It's just constantly, and sometimes you might take 2 steps back. That's okay. It's as long as you keep trying and find those the support network for yourself that works for you and alongside you.
Absolutely. And something that I think we need to understand, if you don't heal, you will move from one abuser to the next, to the next.
It's
to
very
the
common,
next.
yes.
It's very common because that's your normal. That's what you know. So even if you educate yourself, get a CEO title, make lots of money, if you have not done the healing work to cleanse out the pain, the shame, the guilt that you're carrying around, then you're only going to move from one abuser to the next. Now, you may not identify that person as an abuser because abusers know how to flip the script on you. They're not going to do what they did. They're going to do it in a different way.
Right.
So you may be, let's say, for instance, you marry somebody. That person could be an abuser. He doesn't have to hit you.
Right.
He doesn't have. It doesn't have to be sexual.
Right.
But there may
Psychologically.
be emotional components
Psychologically.
that they're psychologically playing on you.
Yes.
And you don't even realize it because they're not sexually abusing you.
Right.
Right.
They're not hitting you. And so they know that if they hit you or sexually abuse you, that's going to give them reason to walk away from you. Okay? So they choose to be your abuser by maximizing their control over you
power.
through
Yep.
emotional, in emotional ways.
And that goes
They
back
know
to
how
the
to
power.
gaslight you.
They know how to gaslight you.
Thank you.
There's
Exactly.
different tactics to
That's
gaslight,
right.
so you definitely have to be aware about that. But talking about that, you just don't know. But that's when you come to a sense of awareness, then that changes the whole dynamic. And, and it takes time. You don't know, because a lot of us, we're just ignorant to the fact that doesn't mean that you're stupid. You just don't know yet. But when you start walking in that moment, everything's changing. You're like, I can identify you, even though you're different from him. I still see you. I know who
Absolutely.
you are.
I know who you
can't
are.
fool me. I see right through you. And when you can do that, you can eliminate those type of people, because again, you took back the power, because you're now you're in a whole different state of awareness.
Absolutely.
Right.
And men who are emotional abusers, a lot of them have mastered that process. You won't even know you're being emotionally abused. And so the bottom line here is, you got to do the healing work so that you can identify the different types of abusers there are out there.
And that leads, so I just want to make sure people also understand, yes, the high percentage of women that are abused. There is a percentage that are men as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Young boys.
And gender nonconforming.
Gender nonconforming, you know. and-
LGBTQ population is one of the highest at risk for domestic and sexual abuse because of they're already ostracized at times from the community. They're already isolated sometimes from their family and their own support system. So just because women's resources, we have women in the title, does not mean that we only serve women. Men, boys, LGBTQ, gender nonconforming, doesn't matter who you are. If you're a survivor, a family member is a survivor, reach out. We're here to help you. But yeah, 1 in 6 men are sexually abused in their life. And that's just the reported numbers. We know that sexual assault, we talked about this earlier, sexual assault is one of the most underreported crimes regardless. But when it becomes a masculine victim, it's even higher of underreported.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So reaching out to those men, young men, to understand that 1 in 6, you're obviously not alone. This has happened to you, other people.
Right.
That you can reach out for help, that you can come back from this. You can receive that healing that you've talked about.
Absolutely.
To grow and become a survivor, to become a thriver, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a bit.
Yeah. You know, and I realized at some point, I was in my 50s when I realized that, consciously began to realize that in order to be successful and thrive in the way that I needed to, I had to not only be a survivor. If you're a good survivor, you partner that with thriving skills, because you do need additional skills to thrive. Right. So if you are a survivor and you have a dream, a calling, a passion that you want to pursue, you're going to need additional skills in order to bring you out of just that survival mode. And if that survival mode works for you, like you said, Lauren, that's good, fine. We support you in all your goodness and desire to be the person you want to be, not who somebody else kind of impacts on your life to be because it benefits them,
right?
But who want to see you thrive, spread your wings,
be the author of your own story.
You're the author of your own story. And let me tell you, my first 5 books were all part of my healing process. I was journaling, and I didn't even know that's what I was doing. I was journaling.
Yes.
And I was getting all the pain that I had stored up inside of me. Because you see, I had gone back to school and educated myself. I had created a program to help other women. But I never recognized the fact that I needed the same kind of help I was providing to other women. Right. And so I think the sooner you begin to, and I think subliminally I was thriving without consciously being aware that that's what I was doing. But at the point when I realized, wow, after I survived, there were things that I did to begin to thrive. I went back to school and got my GED. I went on to school, got my associate degree. Then I went on and got a bachelor's degree. But I was also thriving on my job. So, I mean, it's important to have that thrive, at least that thriver consciousness.
Right.
If I want to thrive, then there are things that I'm going to have to do. I may have to go back to school. I may have to, start journaling and getting all that stuff on the inside of me out, and then maybe sharing that with other people. People always ask me about my books, but I said, you know what? They're available on Amazon.com, but I don't push the sale of those books because they were really part of my healing journey. Mm-hmm. But if you are in the process of healing, I can tell you the process and the progress of each book, right, how it took me to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. So start, if you don't want to talk to somebody else, how about sitting down with a pad, a journal, buy yourself a beautiful journal and do that for yourself, and then sit down and start writing. I mean, stuff was coming out. Stuff started coming out in the middle of the night. So I slept with a journal and a pen. And that's how I penned my first 5 books. I've written 3 more books since. I haven't yet published them yet. I've figured out what I'm going to do for the next book. But you have to kind of figure out, you're not just here because.
Yeah.
We're all here for a reason, and we're all here to help each other. But it has to come from a place of love.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but the problem is most people don't know what love is. They just think it's a feeling.
Right.
No, that's that chemistry thing, part of love, that may end you up in the wrong beds of life. So you have to understand that respect is a component of love. Loyalty is a component of love. And there's a whole bunch of attributes that are part of love. And if any of those attributes are missing, then that's where you need to focus, because there's some garbage somewhere within you. That's why that one attribute of love is missing.
Well, and that goes back to also the healing aspect, right? 'Cause
Yes.
sometimes you don't love yourself because you've been victimized.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
you start the whole blaming yourself and all
Yes.
these things. As I've experienced that myself, blaming myself. I should have never did this. I shouldn't have went there. I should have listened to my father.
This
I should have
happened because.
This happened because.
Right.
Rather than blaming the person who victimized me, I blame myself.
Right. Oh,
Right?
absolutely.
And that was when I had to, later on in life, and to your point, the writings piece, I was writing poetry, like constantly writing poetry, and I think that was a way for me to get out,
It's a catharsis.
Right.
my feelings and be
Right.
able to kind of get through what I was getting through, because, and this is why it's important to have this conversation, is because I grew up in an environment where there was closed conversations or not conversations about sex or what to look for.
Right.
It was like my father was very overprotective, and it was culturally, that's just, he protected us from everybody, right? Like you don't go to a family member's house and stay overnight. You don't sit on your uncle's lap or whatever have you. But now when you're in an environment around other people, how do you know, why that was the case? Why did that bother you so much? And had those conversations, and I don't point blame on my parents, because they protected us as best they could, right? I don't blame anyone, from that aspect. I just feel that it's important to have this conversation, because I want to speak to parents out there that are afraid to have conversations with their children about what's right and wrong.
Absolutely.
From a sexual touch perspective.
Absolutely.
And ensuring they understand, how they manage through those conversations, because not having the conversation is never a good thing.
Right.
Right.
You got to
Right,
have
right,
that
right.
conversation.
You have to have it.
And it's hard. It's definitely a hard conversation to have. But I think another thing we have to recognize is, you said you had a sister. It was you and your sister. We also need to be having this conversation with young men.
Yes.
Boys.
absolutely.
You're a mom of a boy.
Yes.
Right. We have to
Right.
be having these conversations
Yes.
with all genders of children.
Absolutely.
And as young as possible to start talking about bodily autonomy, which allows them to choose who is allowed to touch their bodies for certain ways. Like you tell, there's only mom and dad and doctors are allowed to touch your body to make sure that you are safe and healthy.
Right.
And I remember growing up, my mother talked to me and my sister about the uh-oh feeling.
Okay.
Like that feeling that you get in your gut that something's just not
right.
right. You got to
Right.
listen to that. You got to listen to that voice, and you get that uh-oh feeling, and you go find your trusted adult. And if that trusted adult doesn't listen, then you find another one, and you keep telling it until someone believes you. And that's what those conversations that we need to have with our young kids about. And then as they grow older, then you can start working in things about respect and consent, and talking about accepting no. When someone tells you no, say, okay. Like, there's a really great book that we use for some of our kids. It's a series of books where this young boy has this pet dragon, and it's all these different things about this dragon learning how to be, a real pet. And one of them is how to teach your dragon to accept no. Like, if your mom is telling you, no, I don't want you to go outside and to play in the street, it's not because she doesn't want you to have fun. It's because she doesn't want you to get hurt.
Right.
It's learning to accept no, and maybe asking a question to why, but talking to your children and having open, honest conversations, keeping that line of communication open is going to be absolutely key, because once they get to, hopefully they never will have to, but if they do have a situation, they know that they can come to you.
Absolutely.
And that you will not judge them, and that you will love them unconditionally no matter what.
Absolutely.
And that goes back to your reported cases versus what's really realistically happening, right?
Right.
Because when I started doing some research, I noticed that between the ages of 12 and 17, I believe it was, only 15% of reported cases are children.
Wow.
I personally feel there's a whole lot more of that because they're not having conversations. They're afraid to talk to their parents.
Right.
They're feeling they did something wrong.
Yes.
They're feeling like they can't speak to anybody. They can't trust anyone. And I want to say this to parents. It starts from when they are born, building that trust and open lines of communication, because when they get to that stage of having more kind of adult-related conversations, or things that are going on in the world, they're going to trust you enough to have open dialogue to anything.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's important to have conversations and be open. And again, it's about parenting, not about being a friend to your children.
Parent, it's a verb.
It's a verb. I want you to explain that. Because
Parent, it's a verb. And I can't coin that one. That one goes out to Patrice Peterson, my mother. she coined that one. Is that parent? Yes, it's a noun. It's also an adjective. It's also, but even more importantly, it's a verb. You have to be an active parent. You are not your kid's friend. They will get friends wherever they go in life, but it is your job to make sure that your children grow up healthy, happy, productive, safe adults. That is the job you have. And to love them, of course.
Yeah.
But it is an active job. And as I think you were saying earlier, this is the toughest, hardest job of ever. And if you actually were paid for it, you probably wouldn't have to work another job in your entire life.
That's true. And that's so true.
Exactly.
But I think that a lot of people don't know how to parent. It doesn't come with a
manual.
Children don't come with a manual.
Yeah, they don't come with a manual.
And, I know when I was raising my daughter, I tried to put her in an environment that wasn't like the environment I grew up in. I made sure that she had food. I made sure she had clothing. I made sure that there was a roof over her head. And I tried to provide for her what I didn't have. But there's more to that than just providing the essentials. Or what we believe is the essential, the material things.
Emotional growth and support.
Emotional growth is important too. And that was something I didn't know when I was raising my daughter, that I had to pay attention to her emotional well-being.
Right.
And that's because my emotional well-being was not intact yet.
Right.
I played a good game. Everybody thought I was, but in looking back, I realized when I was raised, my emotional well-being was not intact. So you can only give your children what you have. Absolutely. And if you don't have the wherewithal to provide that emotional component of parenting, then your children may grow up emotionally deficient.
Right.
I think as I grew older and as my daughter grew older and we were able to communicate, I mean, there's still times I think that we don't have the level of communication that I think is essential for either one of us, but to communicate, because we've never communicated in that way, or we communicate not as frequently in that way as I think we need to. And so I think that as parents, when we understand that a child or our children's emotional well-being is predicated on ours,
Right.
then I think for those people who really want to be good parents, they can begin to look up and understand more about how to be emotionally healthy themselves so they can help their children become emotionally healthy. And now the big buzzword is emotional intelligence.
Yep.
And I had a group that I was working on the emotional intelligence component with. Once I was able to understand its relationship to me and to my relationship with everyone else, my daughter, my grandchildren, friends, other people in general.
Right.
So I think we have to get real savvy about our own emotional well-being. And that emotional well-being is also tied to self-love. The more we love ourselves, the more emotionally stable we can become. We got to do the self-work. I do a series that comes out on Sundays entitled Meology, Mastering the Science and Fine Art, because it is an art form of self-love. So important. We've got to love yourself. And I wasn't taught that when I was younger. Matter of fact, there was no teaching in my household at all. My mother was mentally ill in a mental institution most of the time. My father was never there. I mean, we ran roughhouse through the house and through the neighborhood. You know, we did whatever we wanted to do. We threw hooky parties. We did all of that because we didn't know any better, and there was no discipline or rules or guidance in my house.
But you also were experiencing a traumatizing experience through that journey as well.
Right, absolutely.
So it goes back to kind of like you react to certain situations and things the way you feel best because you're dealing with a traumatizing, victimized experience at that point in time.
And the fact that the human mind does not mature to somewhere around the age of 25, and for some it's older.
Right.
I know some 50 and 60-year-olds who've not matured spiritually, emotionally, all of that. But we got to do that. It's important for our well-being as well as the well-being of our children and the people in our lives.
Right.
Do we have a call coming in?
You got a call coming in.
All right.
All right.
Awesome. Caller? Are they on?
Hello, it's Jane.
Are they on?
Hey, Jane! Jane.
Hey, Jane.
How are you?
Hey, listen, I'm so sorry.
Can she hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My internet,
Okay.
but I am
Jane?
listen and
We can hear
hear
us.
you all. And
Okay.
first, I want to thank Lauren so much for coming on and sharing all of the knowledge that is full of it in regard to this subject of
Everyone
rape.
bear with us.
But
We're
I
doing
wanted
some
to
new
just,
stuff today.
Touch on one thing, well, a couple of things. Of course, Lauren, you know me. I like to talk. So,
Jane is.
Earlier you were talking about children that are raped by, unfortunately, it's usually a family member or a close friend. And what I just wanted to say is, don't forget, the abuser, the rapist, they groom these young children. So they target them, they groom them, they involve them. They don't just go in and, sexually abuse them. They groom them to get that way. And then they put the fear of God in them about if your mommy found this out, she wouldn't love you anymore, and so on and so on. So there's that aspect. But I totally agree we have to start at a younger age to teach our children. My own grandchildren, I talk to them all the time about their personal space. The personal parts on their body is theirs. And, if anyone touches any of those things, that they should tell someone, and tell someone until they listen.
Absolutely.
So yes, that's true. But Lauren, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing with us the information you have in regard to drug-related rapes or sexual assaults that we do
Right.
so often, unfortunately, see here in a college town that we are in. I know you have a wealth of knowledge in regard to that, and maybe just share or, educate younger women that are listening in as to how that comes to be, how they go out with their friends for a really nice, fun night out and end up in the ER,
Right.
Knowing something happened to them.
Right.
Would you mind sharing that?
Absolutely. And to point out also, Jane is one of our wonderful hotline volunteers for quite some time now at Women's Resources. So she's one of the wonderful voices you will hear when you call in sometimes to the hotline, taking overnight shifts and sometimes some of our weekends. So Jane has been an excellent addition to the work that we do, the mission that we do. But so I think I'll start.
Thank you so much. And I'm actually on tonight. So.
Oh, there you go.
We love you, Jane.
Tonight, after I think 5 o'clock, if you do need to call the hotline, that's the lovely voice that you will hear to talk to you.
I'm the one I always tell Lauren, you're going to find out I'm sort of like the flu. Like I'm always around. There's no really good vaccine for me. I'm just
We don't want a vaccine for you.
That's not what we need a vaccine
No.
for.
No, Jane is also, we call her Mama Jane at the office because she feeds us.
I make brownies.
Really
and
good
lunches
brownies and her coffee cake.
Listen, I have to say, the group of ladies that work at Women's Resources are underpaid and not appreciated enough for the work and the time and effort that they all put into this program.
Yeah.
And it is not, I always tell people, listen, it's not about the money for them because they, unfortunately, it's not, way up there, a Wall Street type of pay scale. However, it's about, the passion and the love to keep women safe and children safe and educating them so that, someday, we can eradicate domestic violence and sexual assault.
Absolutely.
And we
That's
have
been
to
going on
thank. Yeah, we
beginning
have.
of time, right?
Yeah, we have to thank everyone at the Women's Resources because again, yes, we're speaking of women and children, men as well. You guys have, you work with everyone. And Jane, we thank you and Women's Resources for all the time and the love, the care that you have in every single victim, every single person that you work with. Because without you, you'd have so many other people just not knowing where to go.
Right.
And how to work through what they're dealing with.
Absolutely. And it's
and
so
who to talk to.
important to get out that message.
And it's programs like this that help us get the word out.
Yes.
That we're there,
Absolutely.
that we are going to pick up that phone 24/7. We're going to throw out that life preserver, and we're never going to judge, and we're going to always be there to help them through whatever the crisis is, even if they're not ready.
Absolutely.
To leave,
Right.
even if they're not ready to report.
It's a process.
What's ever happened to them.
It's absolutely a process.
We're there.
Yeah.
And people need to know that really. And thanks to programs like this, we're able to get our word out.
Exactly.
Our mission noticed.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
There's
Absolutely.
And I want to answer her question, but I think it's a good time to throw out the hotline
Yes,
again. It's
Yes, absolutely.
570-421-4200, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can call in and speak to a trained crisis counselor like Jane. But Jane, to your original question about drug-facilitated sexual assaults, they're more common than you think. So I guess a question to the ladies here joining me, what is the most common date rape drug?
Oh man,
Molly's, right?
that's what they had back in the day. I remember Molly's. I don't know.
Any thoughts?
No, isn't there kind of like some type of liquid or a powder that they put into
In the drink, right?
In
into
the
the
drink.
drink?
So I'm going to caveat this as a slightly trick question.
Okay.
Okay.
Every drug.
Alcohol.
Right. Alcohol.
Oh, cool. Oh,
okay.
Right.
It's a drug,
It's
right?
a drug.
Yeah, get them drunk enough and you can control them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this for about 17 years, and I've seen the gamut of different types of sexual assaults.
Oh, we got a caller.
We'll go back to that one.
We'll go back. Yeah, caller.
Hi.
Hi. Your name, ma'am?
How are you?
Good.
How are you, ladies? Thank you
We're
for taking
good.
my call. My name is Cece. I'm calling in because I have a few things in reference to everything that discussed.
Sure.
A survivor of sexual abuse. Let me see. It started when I was younger. Neighbor's significant other, friend's cousin did something like a date rape.
Wow.
And I started my own healing process by writing down names of people who hurt me.
Wow.
Some of those people, or two of those people who hurt me, not necessarily sexual, apologized. So I do have an apology from one of the abusers. He did say he apologized for what he did to me, and he realized that it was very messed up. So, so this is cathartic for me, so give me a moment.
Sure. Absolutely.
I have children, 2 girls, very protective over them as a result of what I experienced. I did talk to them when they were younger about inappropriate touching. My daughter recently told me, she said that, as far as I know, they wasn't abused or anything. She recently told me that she's in her mid-20s, that some guys, by talking to them, she said they're intimidated by girls whose fathers are in the house, and I think that plays a big role of, I'm not saying that you cannot get, as one of the hosts said, she was abused, even though her father was in the house. But a lot of times when there is not a man in the house, I find that abusers target those people. And I'm not saying that they don't target people with fathers out the house, I mean in the house, but it seems like they're more of a target when there's not a man present in the house.
Right.
And I'm not sure if
That
how
is-
y'all feel about that.
No, and that's absolutely something we've seen, especially with child abuse victims. I think I'll go back to a very common name that we've heard is Jerry Sandusky, and it came out in the trial as he actively targeted families and children who did not have a father.
Right.
It was single moms that he absolutely targeted. So that's absolutely
I
true.
think that was the situation with me, because I was raised in a single parent house, and I think it was targeted. Was targeted as a result. You know, you think back now, you start putting everything together, and all the pieces start coming together, and you go, "Oh, is that why?" And then I was listening to one of the hosts, and she said, "You know how you're not supposed to sit on a uncle's lap or whatever." I remember as a child, one of uncles was holding my sister. I was maybe an early teen, maybe 12, maybe. And I realized, I was like, wait, I don't like the way he's holding her. You know, I realized that. I recognize that. Not sure if my mother, I'm just very observant. I watch and see a lot of stuff.
That's great.
My mother, as one of the hostess said, my mother too was in a mental institution, in and out, but the abuse happened before that. So I don't know, did her mental breakdown, was it a result of what she found out happened? You know what I mean? Or was it just life in general?
Right.
Just everything that y'all talking about, the emotional intelligence and, maturity. I want to talk about that, too. The other daughter told me, we started talking about, we feel that my husband is not emotionally available, and we confronted him on that. But he also came from a place where there was not emotional support in the household.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that's actually very common for men.
And
they're not taught.
Like everything that y'all talked about, I'm here to testify. I understand that we're not alone, but it's just good to recognize certain things, certain behaviors. Sometimes mothers, they don't have babysitters, so they have to send them over there to somebody's house, and then there may be a creep there just waiting, for that. So you have to watch out for those things. I would take off. I was fortunate where I could take off. If I didn't have a babysitter, I did screen babysitters. I wanted to know who was at the house, and my daughters They now understand why I didn't want them to spend the night at certain people's houses. You know, boys or whoever at teenage years, their hormones start, and then they find targets. Not necessarily because they were abused, but it's just those hormones. So
exactly.
They both come into into play. So I'm just on my journey, trying to support. I'm glad y'all had this on today.
Oh, absolutely.
And thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely,
Oh,
Susie. Thank you so much for calling in. We do appreciate you calling in, and God bless you on your journey, continuing of healing.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to actually hearing from you.
Absolutely.
In future.
Like I said, it's a day-by-day journey.
Right.
And the
Thank
better
you so much,
you are
Susie.
able to feel about yourself, the more you will find ways to protect yourself.
Right.
And so I know, like this morning, I don't get out of bed without prayer and meditation. I call it prayerful meditation. I talk to God first, and then I quiet myself and allow the Spirit of God within me to speak back to me. And this morning I was like, okay, what is it that I'm going to say or write on the Mama C's simple sermon, simple Sunday sermon this morning? And the word what I heard was no. No is the most powerful.
I know some 50 and 60-year-olds.
Oh.
What did she say?
It was technical.
Oh, okay. It was okay. No, because no is one of the most powerful words in any language. No. But what I said was your tone of voice and your body language has to be in alignment with your no.
Right.
If you're saying, oh, no, that's an uncertain no.
Powerful.
If you say no, your face, your tone, and your body are all speaking the same language, people will back off if they are looking to treat you as prey.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about that, because one of the movements that we're talking about, moving away is no means no, is shifting it, is yes means yes. And anything other than an enthusiastic, fully consensual, fully cognitive yes is a no.
Is a no.
It's a no.
Right.
Automatic no.
And it's a really hard concept, especially for our young women to garner, because we are groomed to be meek.
Yeah.
Girls should be silent, to be ladylike. And I mean, there's a place for all that. And if that's your jam, go for it. But that's just how we were raised. And when you're in a situation that's making you uncomfortable, you're not trained to tell them, no, stop it. You're just like, no, I'm not ready right now, but that's still a no. That's still a no. And train people to accept that.
Absolutely. I so agree with you. And I think that, when we understand that we have the power to say no, then we can say no and actually feel that no and transmit that energy that comes along with our no.
And that's when we train our little kids. We go and we do these great programs for young kids. It's second graders, these Care for Kids programs that Women's Resources Prevention Education programs do.
Right.
That's what we talk to them about, how to say no and say it loudly, to project their voice, to say no, go, and then tell.
Absolutely. A lot of people say to me, oh, you're so strong. And I say, I didn't have any other choice.
Yeah, it doesn't happen by accident.
It doesn't happen by accident. I had to be strong as a kid to survive my childhood.
Yeah.
Then I had to be strong as a young woman to survive everything that was going on in the world that I had not been introduced to or prepared for. So, yes, I'm strong because I have to be. I was strong when I was raising my daughter. There was no male in the home
Goes back to
to
the
be
single parent.
to protect her or me.
Right.
So I had to be the protector.
Right.
And then even now, there's no male in our home to protect me, my daughter, my grandchildren.
Right.
So my daughter and I have to be that strong force in our household so that we're able, so that if someone, well, first of all, when that strong energy transmits, predators move. They don't want to fight. They're looking for somebody who's weak.
Who they can control.
They can control, exactly. I'm not controllable. My daughter's not controllable. And so if they know that they can't control you, they're going to somebody because they're looking for easy prey.
Right.
So those of us who are from single parent households or who've been part of single parent households, we must be strong in order to make it through. Otherwise, the outside will eat us up.
Right.
The outside forces will eat us up alive.
Yeah.
And then as a single parent, a single mother, you must be strong for your children.
Right, right.
You know, and
Yep.
you must be knowledgeable about what dangers your children and even us can be in.
Right.
And then stay mindful, because mindset, our mindset is important. So we have to shape it and mold it so that we are able to get through this thing we call life, because there are so many obstacles, challenges,
Right,
and
right.
predators that we have to be on the alert for.
So, Kalima, I want to actually ask Kalima. I mean, how are you managing with your children those conversations, and how are you kind of working through those conversations with your children?
Okay, I'm going to answer that, but before
Yeah.
I answer that, I was going to piggyback off Mama C.
Yeah.
And just talking about strength. And within strength, it's great to have support.
Right.
You have
Absolutely.
that support
Right.
system. So
Absolutely.
when your support system is constantly encouraging you, and like we went back before, we were talking about emotional intelligence, like how we teach our children.
Right.
And we say, this is good touch, bad touch. Like I teach my 5-year-old.
Right.
Which areas are the safe areas so people can't touch you?
Right.
And what areas you don't want them to touch? And I said, whatever you choose, like you said, that's a no. That area is restricted. Don't
Right.
touch me. I remember one day we was in the dollar store and I was at the cash register and I was ringing up my stuff, and my son was right next to me, and I think the lady tapped him on the shoulder and he told her straight up, "Don't touch me." And she said, "You're absolutely right. I apologize, but I love how he had that power."
That's
Right.
great.
Because I
Absolutely.
give my son that support system that he can talk that way.
Great.
And he's only 5 years old, and I said, and that's what's needed.
Right.
The support system. Even when they do come out and speak to you. Now, here's the biggest part. When they speak to you and they tell you that someone actually did something to them, now they're looking at you, how you going to handle it. And when
Yep.
they see how you handle it and you give that emotional support. That just changed the whole tone. And I have 2 members in my family that, that went through, sexual assault, and I had to be there for them. And just for them to feel good that, wow, she believed in me. That was number
Right.
one, because
Number
they
one,
need to know that you
believe.
believe in them.
Absolutely.
And when other people, and this is what I need people, I really need people to get out this mindset. When they tell you who the predator is, do not go into defense mode of that predator, because that's who they are.
Yes.
They put that mask on. Oh, not me, never me. I can't do that. Yes, they can.
The predators need support systems too.
Hello? Hello? That,
People who inadvertently are not aware that they are giving power to that
To
predator.
the predator.
Right.
Right.
And disempowering our children.
Right.
Right.
And that's I think another important piece of this is that as parents or even friends or boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever you get in, whatever situation you're in, if a child, adult, whoever it is, says to you, this person did X,
Yep.
don't immediately protect the
Right.
predator.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, you may not know because you wasn't physically there to see it happen. Doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Exactly.
Or because you feel you have trust in this person.
you know them.
Or you,
You don't
know
know
them.
them.
You don't know anybody.
Exactly.
Oh,
If you're not that person, you don't know them.
Let me tell you
Exactly.
something. In here, you never know what's going on in a person.
Right.
And I keep telling people that. Like, I had a friend one day, and this kind of irritated me, and it was a trigger. And he was like, "Oh, not my family." And I said, "You know what? Your mindset is just like everybody else. Everybody think, not my family.
Right.
It can be your family, because guess what? It was someone in my family, and I still supported that person." I'm
Right.
like, wow. And then this even, too, like, this being around this person, and this, I saw their little triggers. I'm like, nah, I believe them.
Yeah.
Because they wasn't acting like this. And just with that person, just give them like that little trigger. And I'm like, I see it. And that's the thing too. You have to see, and there goes again when I'm talking about the awareness thing. You have to be in awareness. You have to pick up the little behaviors. You have to see why a person is changing, especially in children. They will tell you. You think a lot of times like, why are they acting like that? When what's wrong with you? Instead of trying to put force in them, won't you sit down with them and have a conversation? That's one thing I do with my son. I always allow him to speak to me.
Right.
Tell mommy what's going on. Did somebody do something to you? And he would tell me, and that's one thing I love about him. He's so vocal, but again, it goes back to me giving him that support. So he feel confident in me to do what I have to do just in case somebody did anything to him, not even just touch him, just anything, as he knows mommy's going to handle it.
Yeah.
And he see me in action.
Right. And that goes back to, we were talking about trust factor, right? Just because you're a parent doesn't mean you have immediate trust.
Right.
That
It doesn't
child
happen by
has
accident.
immediate trust, right? That's learned behavior based on your experiences, based on how you feel with that person. So I want parents to also understand that just because you bore a child doesn't mean everything is immediate, right?
Right.
You know, like you have to build that confidence in that child. You have to nurture them. You have to make them feel comfortable with you, comfortable to speak and have a conversation, not be constantly scolded and things of that nature when they're acting a certain way, erratic or whatever have you. It's really building that trust and that comfort level and that safe space for them. And that's a key word, safe space.
Right.
And that is what's needed for people who are victimized, a safe space
Absolutely.
to have the
You
conversation.
have to believe them.
Right.
Less than 1% of all children who allege abuse against them are actively, keyword actively, being false. What you'll probably think of as them lying is them testing the waters. They're going to put out little nuggets of not fully what happened because they're not 100% sure how someone's going to react. And this is very common, especially the like older teens, preteens, to see how someone is going to react. They're not going to just come out and say, Uncle Joe touched me in the bathtub. No, very, they're going to hedge. They're going to push. They're going to see how you're going to react. Are you going to freak out? Are you going to believe me? Are you going to ask me, drill me for 20 questions? They are going to test the waters, but you have to keep those lines of communication open, which is so key. And actively say, I believe you and thank you for telling me.
Absolutely.
And in my case, twice we went to the authorities because that's how serious I was about, supporting these two individuals and my family. And when I knew it, before I walked into that station, I said, my life is never going to be the same again. But when I looked at that person next to me, I said, that person is worth it.
Absolutely.
Worth it.
Absolutely.
Like just thinking about it makes me want to go to tears because I'm like, I don't care. I will fight for the battle for you because I believe in you.
That's right.
When we stepped in that precinct and we told our story, it's like, and that's another good thing too because a lot of people feel like, oh, if I say anything, nothing gets done. When you keep talking, you keep reporting, they have it on records. Not only did we go to the authorities, we went to the courts, and guess what? That predator, they kind of backed off because they see I set a serious tone. I'm not playing with you.
Exactly.
Do not play with my family. And I said it in the court. Yes, Your Honor. No, Your Honor. This person did this. And I went on file myself and I testified what I did and what I didn't do because I spoke my truth.
Absolutely.
And guess what? Because I did that, I took back the power.
You took back the power.
I had the power. So now this person is powerless. They can't even do anything. They can't even put nothing out of my head because sometimes when you go ahead and act first, they can't do nothing because you did what you were supposed to do. You did the right
Absolutely.
protocols.
Absolutely.
And the other piece of that is not only did you take back your power, but the next person that they attempt to victimize, they are almost, and I'm not saying that they would not do it, but there are in some cases they may pull back and say, I'm not going to victimize this person because they told me I went to court. And not everybody goes to jail. Right?
Exactly.
And that's the unfortunate thing because I've looked at the statistics about how many people actually.
Most people never get to trial. Most sexual assaults never get to trial. Most sexual assaults, are never reported. Most sexual assaults never get actually charges pressed against them. And even less of them actually get to a trial phase, and even less than that actually get a conviction.
And I think it's important to be aware that sometimes the predator is sitting where the judge is sitting.
They go into positions of power because it gives them access.
Yeah.
So we hear about the Boy Scouts and the coaches.
They
They
go
it up again, Jerry Sandusky. They those positions don't make predators. Those positions don't make child abusers.
Exactly.
Child abusers seek out these positions to gain access.
To gain
the
power and
Yes.
control.
Power and control.
Exactly.
And also, to your point, it creates that support system. When the thing broke with the clergy or with Sandusky or whatever, they're like, that couldn't happen. He's so nice. And you know what?
Oh, they
Probably
usually
is nice.
are. That's how they get in.
Exactly. Because they are very good manipulators.
They're very excellent.
Very good
Exactly.
actors.
Absolutely. And one of the points that I have listed that I think is so important to bring up is sometimes as a survivor, you spend years longing or grieving the family you didn't have. You know, I know many a times I've said, I wish I had a loving, supportive family. And, you know, the reality is I didn't. But I have to move on.
Right.
I have to let go. I have to let go of whatever is tugging at my heart, at my spirit. Because I can't change what was, but I can change what is and can be.
Correct.
So we have to be real. Reality has to be our stepping stones. You know, here's a stepping stone that I can use to get to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. And it is step by step by step. The magic doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a lifetime.
It's a process.
It's a process.
Absolutely.
So so we talked about children, and I know we talked about even sexual abuse or rape that happens when someone is inebriated, drug, alcohol. So I think to your point, you know, and we always hear about this in college dorms, right?
Yep.
It happens quite often.
Often.
Doesn't mean that it's just college dorms.
Right.
It's just adults in bar settings, club settings, at home with the, you know, potentially someone who is you know, abusing alcohol or drugs. You know, it doesn't make it okay
Right.
because they're inebriated or
Exactly.
they didn't have, or they were on drugs or they had alcohol in their system or what have you. It's not okay. I want you to kind of elaborate more on that subject because I know we didn't get to fully.
Absolutely. So people who utilize alcohol or actual drugs they're incapacitating their victims.
Right.
And the thing is, it's not like sometimes you'll get that abuser who is let's say that term, plying someone with alcohol, right? But what if the person who ends up being the victim they're just having a good time. They're out partying, they're with their friends.
Right.
Just because you choose to drink does not give someone the right to touch you.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I don't care if you are drunk, high, naked, dancing on a pole.
Right.
Once you are inebriated, you lose the ability to give consent. And that needs to be very, very clear. And especially with a college campus, here in Monroe County, 2 college campuses actually, you have to understand that just because you choose to drink and then something happens, the police have the bigger fish in mind. A lot of victims are afraid, well, I was drinking, I was underage,
Right.
I shouldn't have been, and then there's that guilt, they're afraid, they don't want to get in trouble. Okay, underage drinking, rape. Which one do you think they're going to want to go after? You might get a talking to. It's like, maybe wait till you're 21, do it
don't
legally,
drink,
but
right.
I have never met a law enforcement officer who goes after a victim because they were drinking.
Because they were drinking.
I've never met one.
Right.
I've never met one because they're more concerned about the bigger fish.
Right.
They're about the rape, about the sexual assault.
Right.
Your choice to do drugs or to drink does not give someone the right to touch you.
Absolutely.
I mean, there was that horrible case where there was the young girl who was underage and drinking at a party. She got very, very drunk, and a bunch of boys raped her, and it was filmed. This poor girl suffered terribly, because it's then spread around social media.
Right.
We need to call it what it is. This was rape.
This was rape.
When you are
Exactly.
unable to give consent, whether you're conscious or unconscious, if you are inebriated in some way, and I say inebriated broadly,
Right.
also incapable of giving consent because let's say you have developmental disorder,
Right.
you cannot give consent.
Yeah.
Right.
And we talk about consent. When I go and I talk to high schoolers or in college age, and I say, what is consent? Not a lot of people can answer me, which is very concerning.
Do you do education on consent?
Yes.
Be honest.
Yeah,
we need to
do
education
yeah.
on consent.
Absolutely. We absolutely do education on consent for our prevention education programs. But understanding that someone who is incapacitated in any way cannot give consent. And that's where I go back to a yes is a yes type of a thing. Only a fully cognizant, enthusiastic consent yes can you go forward. And it has to be also a process. Like, check in with your partner. If something's uncomfortable, read the nonverbal cues. Say, is this okay? And I don't say like, oh, like, well, do I need to go that extreme? Do I need to have them sign on the dotted line? No.
Right.
That's you being a dope.
Right.
This is called an adult relationship. This is how adults interact. Is communication.
Right.
Clear and open communication. And honestly, when there's drugs and alcohol involved, it's probably best to just hands off it.
Yeah.
Make sure that other person gets home safely. I mean, who do you want to be? Do you want to be the person who makes sure they get home safely and be the good guy in the situation, or the bad guy? Who wants to be the hero? Who wants to be the villain? Pick one.
Right.
Exactly.
I'm going to throw the number out there again because I'm sure there's plenty of people out there. There's our silent audience. There's people who have been impacted by being a victim or victimized, rather. 888-304-4401. If you have any questions, comments, please call us. I want to talk about, you mentioned about a children's program. Mm-hmm. And I feel it's important from when we talk about resources that are available, because again, we definitely know there's a lot of people who are impacted by this subject, right? How do we get to a point where we help people come through these traumatizing experiences?
Right.
How do we evolve? How do we heal? How do we overcome? And then to your point, thriving, right? Because there's that level of thriving. But from a children's perspective, what are some of the resources or things that are available for children to kind of help them?
So here at Women's Resources, we actually have child abuse counselors. So we have a specific person who is dedicated to providing counseling services just for children and teens. We're going to be growing that position to more than just one person because we are being a little bit overloaded right now. But it's not just direct victims. We call them direct victims, and significant others are indirect victims. So let's say there's a child who's in a home and they're witnessing abuse between their parents. They're being affected, whether they're being struck or not. So that program is there for any child who is affected either directly or indirectly by abuse, sexual, physical, verbal, in the home or to themselves. Secondly, there's great resources out there that parents can utilize for free to help them learn how to have these conversations. It's not an easy. You're not going to learn how to intuitively have this consent conversation, to have the safe and unsafe touch. I remember you brought it up, the good touch, bad touch. We're actually getting away from utilizing that, and there's a reason we're using safe and unsafe touching, because sometimes a bad touch feels good. So then the kid's confused. I'm like, okay, I know this is cognitively, I know this is a bad touch, but it feels good. I'm confused. Safe and unsafe touch, and using that feeling. This doesn't make me feel comfortable. I don't feel safe. I don't feel okay.
Right.
Find your adult. But I think it's safesecurekids.org. It's a great free resource for parents. You can learn. There's videos. There is worksheets you can download to work with your kids. There's conversation starters on all different types of topics, and it is 100% free for you to go on and utilize these resources as a parent or as a caregiver. I mean, we're more often than not, we're seeing grandparents raising kids, so this is for anybody who's a caregiver of children to utilize these services. If you suspect child abuse, you don't have to know that it happened. You don't have to see that it happened. All you have to do is have a suspicion. You can call Childline. You can get that number online, or you can make a report through the internet. And that is the Pennsylvania Child Abuse Reporting Hotline. You don't have to know 100% that it happened. All you have to have is a suspicion. There's people who are mandated reporters, like myself, teachers, doctors, people who interact with kids, and then there's everybody else who are ethical reporters who probably should but are not mandated by law to. But I want to stress that we are all in the job of protecting children.
Absolutely.
All you need is a suspicion.
Absolutely.
And making a report in good faith, meaning you're not trying to get anybody in trouble because you're being vindictive. You legitimately fear for the safety of a child. That's all that matters.
Right.
And if you are wrong, great.
Right.
Means someone's not being hurt.
Right.
Okay.
But making that report in good faith, you are putting it out there that you might save a child. Make that report. Make that call.
Right.
You might be that deciding factor that kid is safe for the first time in their life.
Right. And I think we second guess ourselves to such a degree that it's an impediment to us and other people.
Yes.
So, I mean, trust your gut.
Absolutely.
I think it's important that we trust that gut instinct is there, and we will design with it for a purpose.
Absolutely.
You know, don't make excuses and don't be afraid. Some people are afraid, well, what if I'm wrong?
What if you're right?
What if you're right? Exactly.
That's what you really
Exactly.
should be focused on. What if you're wrong? If you're wrong, great.
Great.
You're wrong. But what if you're right?
Yeah.
That's where the onus should be. What if you're right? Then making that call could save a kid's
Could
life.
save a kid's life, exactly. And there's one point that I think is very important to this whole process is be compassionate with yourself.
Yes.
Sometimes we're too hard on ourselves. We put the blame all on ourselves. And whenever we are victimized, it is never our fault.
Absolutely.
It is the fault of the victimizer.
Yep.
So we have to then realize that, internalize that, and embrace that reality. And then be compassionate with ourselves. If we can't love ourselves, then who else? You know, unfortunately, too many survivors are running around trying to be loved, find love. But you don't actually know love until you love yourself. And when you know what that feels like, you know when somebody is being unloving to you, maybe to your children or whatever. You got to understand what it feels like. And it begins with yourself. And when you can love yourself to the degree that you never allow a predator in your space or your children's space, then you can be assured that your protection mode is working and operating at higher levels of safety.
Right.
Absolutely.
I'm going to have you give your information again because I want to make sure we have 15 minutes. I
Absolutely.
want your information
Absolutely.
to continue to come out there. Our phone number again for anybody who'd like to call in. We have about 15 minutes left. 888-304-4401. Please do not be afraid to call in if you have a comment, question, anything for the hosts here and our guests.
Sure. And so our hotline at Women's Resources is 570-421-4200, 4200. And I did find the child line number, the child abuse hotline number for Pennsylvania is 1-800-932-0313. You can call that number to report suspected child abuse. You can remain anonymous. The same with Women's Resources Hotline. You can also remain anonymous. You can just call to ask questions, to understand our services, see if it's a fit for you. We are mandated reporters, so if there's someone who is reporting child abuse, that we make sure that person knows that we will have to make a report.
Right.
But it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We don't take a break. Please give us a call. You don't have to go through this alone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We've got a call coming in. Hello, caller. This is the Sistahship. Hello.
Yes, I have.
Hi.
Hello?
Yes. Your name? You're alive.
Yes. Yeah, I have a question, and it's with respect to legislation. How do we shorten the window so that people that have unfortunately been abused are more inclined to come and speak up? Because with some of the high-profile cases, we seem to hear that, people have waited, and I'm not blaming the victim, but what can we do as just a society and even from a law enforcement or legislative perspective, make sure that victims are comfortable coming forward so due process against these predators can be taken sooner and more effectively?
First, I want to say, sounds like that is
Yeah,
one
Darren
of our
Johnson.
brothership. Darren Johnson, I should know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Darren, for that question. Great question. And he is on the brothership.
The brothership.
Darren Johnson, aka DJ Jersey.
Okay.
Lauren.
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
Fantastic question. And there's actually a bill that is circulating through a Harrisburg legislator right
heard
now
about that.
about expanding this 2-year limited window for child abuse victims to do civil reporting. This is not criminal, civil reporting. to their abuser, and it is kind of tied to the abuse cases that came out of the different archdioceses and dioceses in Pennsylvania for child abuse. But to report child abuse criminally, there is no window right now. At least I believe so. I'm gonna have to check that one. So
Right.
come back to me.
Right.
But if you are a victim of child abuse and you want to report the crime to the police, it doesn't matter if you are 5 or 50. Report it. The difference where it comes into play is when it's a civil report, when it's a civil matter, meaning non-criminal, meaning a lawsuit against someone. That's where that bill is coming into play, where they're wanting to open that 2-year window to allow for retroactive victims. So people who've already missed the civil window to come
Right.
out and make a report and to seek civil litigation against their abusers. It's still in the works. I don't know where it stands as of right now. I believe it's still in committee, but it is a possibility. But I will check the law right now
Yeah,
and go
absolutely.
into it. But I do believe for criminal reporting, there is no time limit. But I'm going to check that right
Yeah,
now.
no.
So
I mean,
discuss.
no, that's a good question, and Darren, we'll check into that information because I think, again, that's the other concern for those that are victimized, being able to get justice against the person, the predator, right?
predator.
As we'll call him the predator.
Yeah.
Great question. We'll look into that, Darren. Thank you so much for calling in, and we'll be talking soon.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I think that's a great question only because there are people who are concerned about how do they get justice. It's not yes, I'm reporting the crime, right? Because it is a crime. Whether it be criminal charges or civil case, I'm reporting it, but I don't feel like I'm getting heard or justice outside of just me being able to convey
Right.
that I was victimized by this individual and putting it out there.
Right.
But how do we really get after the justice around that? And it goes back to what we were saying. Like, it's a very small population of people who go to jail for, rape.
And some
Exactly.
who go to jail end up out.
Right, but the
It's
more
very
we
hard.
speak about
Quickly.
it,
Right.
the more we speak about it, right, and the more we report it, just like I told you, I went through the authorities and I went to the court. So
Right.
when you do stuff like that, this make our representatives of our state work hard because they have to seek into
seek it.
these
Make them
areas.
accountable.
Yes, they
Right.
have to work hard. They have to. Okay, this is what's happening. So it gives them the opportunity to put that into legislation and to do something about it. So
Right.
Absolutely.
that's how it can get to that level by coming out and speaking up. And how y'all speak up is women like us giving you the encouragement to do
Exactly.
so,
Right.
to let
Right.
you know you're not alone, to let
Right.
you know
Right.
that you have support, to let you know if you do need a safe place. Resources like Women Resource, they would help you in those because
Right.
there are women that they're in the household and they cannot. And I do believe last year when I was speaking to a licensed therapist, she said when we was locked down in COVID, she
Right.
said, "Do you know how many
Calls.
that we receive? Because these people are home with their abuse."
With their
I wanted to segue into that because
Yes, because I can talk to that.
Absolutely.
Firstly, before we go on to that one, because that's a great
Right.
topic, is the current criminal statute of limitations is capped for child sexual abuse is capped at age of adulthood plus 32, so approximately 50 years old.
Okay.
Okay.
For civil, the way it is right now for civil is adulthood plus 12 years, so approximately 30 years old. Now, the two House bills, House Bill 962 and House Bill 963, those are the two I was referencing. 962, it extends the civil statute of limitations to age 55, and it removes the criminal statute of limitations entirely. That one does have a lot of support,
Exactly.
which I think is great.
That's awesome.
963 is the 2-year window that is still being under investigation.
Right.
Now, to calls, this was an interesting experience during the COVID-19 lockdown, we'll call it, is our hotline and hotlines across the country actually went down
Really?
for a time. And I'll tell you why. So when you're told to stay home, stay safe, how do you stay safe when home isn't safe?
Oh my
You
You're not
make
going
no
to work.
waves.
You're not going to work. Your abuser isn't going to work. You're not taking kids to school.
Right.
You're not taking them to hobbies. You're not taking them to sports. There was no time to find a safe time to call.
And
You're
there was
locked down
there was
with
no
that
safe
individual.
place.
Right. So once we started to open up a little bit more again and people were able to go out and go to work, the floodgates opened.
floodgates
floodgates
open.
We
open.
have received in the last fiscal year the more hotline calls than we've ever had, almost 2,000 hotline calls
Wow.
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 just for our hotline alone.
And that's well, you're right. I mean, you think about it, we were actually having this conversation at home, and I'm like, you're in a home of an abuser, sexual or not, right? And you're like, how do you, there's so many cases probably that people are afraid to call the police or call whatever because they're with that abuser. They don't know if that
Exactly.
abuser is coming back home.
Right.
There is
And they
no
have
safe
to
place.
repeat the same cycle
Right.
over
Yeah.
and over again.
Right.
So it wasn't a safe place for them because
Absolutely.
they were in an environment that wasn't safe to begin with.
Right. Right.
So man, that's amazing. So I know we have 6 minutes left. I just want to quickly say that we have a sponsor for the Sistahship. We Share Corp. They also are an organization that helps with people who are down on their luck pretty much and need some support. So I want to thank We Share Corp for being the Sistahship sponsor. They have other resources available, food banking, they have clothing available, furniture, all type of services, moving services, cleaning services. So again, please reach out to them, We Share Corp. We appreciate them for being our sponsor and also being an extended resource
Yes.
for the community as well.
Absolutely.
Man, this subject is just
I think we need a part 2.
we need a part
We need
two.
a part
And you
two.
know what, Mama said? You said something earlier, and I said, "Ooh, that's a part 2," because you was talking about like when you're in a relationship, and you're overcoming some stuff.
Right.
When you're dating someone who's been in that
Yes.
mindset, that's hard. So you have to know how to deal with that person, and not a lot of people can deal with that. So
And that's something else that women's resources can't with. That would be what we
Yes.
consider a significant other, whether you are like married to them or if you're dating someone.
Dating.
Call our hotlines, explain to them. We can give you services beyond just the direct victim. We can help support you to help support them.
that's awesome.
How do
Absolutely.
we, so I guess the question is from a healing perspective, we know writing, getting those feelings and all those things out there, right?
Journaling is
Counseling.
very great. Counseling, reaching out to women's resources.
Breaking the silence.
Yep, breaking the silence.
Getting the counseling you need.
All of those are great supports to just know, and I know it's so hard, and I'm speaking to whoever who is a victim, who is a survivor right now, that your core is telling you that it's your fault. It's not. It's not your
not.
fault. It's never going to be your fault. It is flipping the script. Someone did this to you. You didn't choose it. You
Absolutely.
didn't decide it. You didn't want it. It's not your fault. And we believe you, and we are here for you to help you, to guide you, to be by your side as you move forward in your life free from violence.
And, I think what everyone who's watching and listening to us today has to know is that the sistership is not a hobby, it's a calling. And all of the women who are part, even the brothers in the brothership, it's a calling. We feel the calling and we have answered and responded to the calling. So we're here. You can reach out to us whenever we're online, or you can go to the Sistahship Network on Facebook. That's the group where we provide lots of information and we interact with people who are part of the group. So there are many, many ways that you can get the help that you need, but you have to start trusting. And I know that's hard because it took me a long time to trust. But I think by beginning the healing work and learning to love yourself, you will begin to understand who you can trust and who is untrustworthy. And then, as I did the work, more and more, I began to get more and more support. More women came into my life who were supportive and loving and there for me, and would put on the Vaseline on the face and the head rag on if they had to, Hello, I over my 67 years, I have gained such an incredible support system. Walking around in pain is no fun.
No.
Right.
Feeling less than is no fun. And not taking care of yourself and taking responsibility for protecting yourself is not an excuse.
Right.
So we want to put a stop to the abuse, whether it be man on woman, woman on man, woman to woman, man to man. wherever the abuse is coming from, we can't eradicate the abuse until we're willing to face that's happening to us, and then begin the process of loving ourselves, even if nobody else. I didn't grow up in a home feeling like I was loved. I never heard anyone say I love you when I grew up. When as a child, no one ever said I love you. Never heard it. But I loved me. I learned to love me. And I say, you know what, Deborah? I love you. And I feel it. It's like my whole body chemistry responds to that love.
That's empowering.
And that's it's empowering.
That's empowering.
Yes.
And you got to constantly enrich your life
Right.
in order to empower yourself. If you are just saying, well, I'm empowered, but you're not enriching your life, you're not empowered. Okay, you're just verbalizing something you've heard or what you think is the buzzword or the buzz phrase for now. There's a process.
And that goes with Mama C's last moments, last words of the Sistahship Network. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Lauren,
from
thank you.
Women's
Thank you.
Resources.
Thank you so
Lady
much.
K.
Lady K.
Your girl, Stepfire. We will see you back here on Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Get on the Sistahship Network. Get on the bus. We're all here to support everyone. We love y'all.
We love you.
See y'all
All
next
right.
Sunday.
Next Sunday. Same
My
place,
sisters, we
same
got
back
this,
channel.
sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya.
Substance. Sis, you know we on a mission, no games. Help each other get over some things. Build strength, bring change. Cause we've been through the rain. Now it's time to shine like bling. Let's talk about life skills. We building up our quality to right wills. We rolling out of poverty. Love heals. So we become the prodigy of how a sistership could be a really hot commodity. Stand together, we united, hold hands. Support each other dreams and our plans. Doing everything we can. Come on. Just to show we understand the power of a friendship fam. Live life on purpose. Together we learn it. Yeah, let's talk. We don't wanna see you hurt, and we here for each other. No matter the color, networking. That's for sure and for certain. Come on. Yeah, we on a sistership. Come with us. We on a sistership. Yeah, we on a sistership. Roll with us. We on a sistership.
We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya. We're my sisters, we got this, sisters. You roll with me and I'll roll with ya.
Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it. Sistahship, we got this now. Come on, let's talk about it.